For over 100 years, strange stories have drifted through the valleys of Appalachian mountains. Tales of winged creatures with beak-like metal and eyes that glowed in the dark. Locals spoke in hushed tones of livestock vanishing without a trace, of claw marks on trees no known animal could have made. Most would have just dismissed these stories as mountain folklore, old superstitions passed down around campfires and cabin porches. But what if there was truth behind the legend? What if hidden deep within the forest a creature had survived something unknown to science, which actually happens all the time, yet carefully guarded by those who found it? A discovery long kept secret until the day it was uncovered by complete accident, bringing with it more questions than answers. Today, we'll talk about one of the most fascinating and mysterious finds in American natural history, the Snallygaster. The legend of the Snallygaster begins long before the creature earned its name. In the mid-18th century, as waves of German immigrants settled in the shadowed valleys of the Appalachian Mountains, they brought more than tools and traditions. Woven into their culture was a rich tapestry of folklore, and if you've ever heard of the German folklore, essentially there's just stories they tell of not sucking your thumb, so then the parent cuts off their thumb, or, eating kids. Basically everything the Germans come up with as far as bedtime stories, absolutely horrible. But these stories of ghosts, forest spirits, and things that move too quickly to be seen, it's pretty much the standard. Among these was the Schnellgeist, the fast spirit, a spectral presence said to vanish without a trace. At first, the Schnellgeist was little more than a whisper, a tale told by candlelight, but soon the term would take on a more tangible and far more terrifying form. The first documented account came in 1735 near what is now Frederick County, Maryland. A farmer reported that at twilight a monstrous bird-like creature had descended from the sky and snatched one of his animals. He described a beast unlike anything he'd ever seen. Massive wings shaped like a dragon's, a beak curved and gleaming like metal, and a size that dwarfed even the largest birds of prey. Within weeks, similar stories began to spread. From scattered homesteads across the region came reports of livestock vanishing without a sound. Others were found mutilated, claw marks gouged deep in barn doors and also onto fence posts. Fear traveled faster than the creature itself, as farmers were unsure exactly what they were facing, turned to kind of old country traditions. Six-pointed hex signs began appearing on barns, symbols meant to ward off evil and protect their homes. But the sightings wouldn't stop. Witnesses described a being of impossible speed and uncanny intelligence, something that seemed to slip between the cracks of the natural world. As generations passed and cultures blended, the old German Schnellgeist slowly evolved, its name reshaped by new tongues and new fears. What had once been a spectral, fast spirit was now spoken of with a different edge. It was the Snallygaster. No longer a whisper from the old world, but a creature rooted firmly in the new. But it wasn't until the early 1900s that the Snallygaster legend truly erupted into public life. In 1909, newspapers across Maryland and well beyond began printing startling accounts. Headlines spoke of a flying monster stalking the night skies. Farmers reported hearing a high-pitched, unnatural screech echoing through the hills. One family swore they had seen the creature land on their roof. What stood out most in their account, though, was the thing had a single, unblinking eye in the center of its forehead. Some reports turned darker. One story told of a man found dead in a remote clearing, his neck punctured as if by a long, sharp beak. According to the tale, he had been drained of all of his blood. Of course, if your neck gets pierced by anything, you're going to lose most of your blood. Panic stirred in the region as sightings began to surge. Witnesses claimed to have seen the creature gliding overhead, enormous wings slicing through the fog. But no matter how often it was spotted, it never stayed. The Snallygaster came and went like a shadow across the moon. And yet, as strange as these reports were, the legend took on an even more surreal turn. That same year, near Frog Hollow in Washington County, a curious encounter was said to have taken place. As the story goes, a local still was running a 2,500-gallon vat of moonshine. And remember, if you pay taxes on your moonshine, it's not moonshine. It's rich, fermented scent drifting through the trees. The Snallygaster, lured by the aroma, flew in low to investigate, but it came too close. Overwhelmed by the heavy fumes, the creature then lost control mid-flight, because if you've ever inhaled moonshine fumes, yeah. Anyways, witnesses claimed it plummeted straight into the boiling mash, vanishing beneath the bubbling surface in an instant. Shortly after receiving a tip about the illicit distillery tucked deep into the backwoods of Frederick County, revenue agents George Danforth and Charles Cushwa arrived on the scene. Great, the feds are here. Expecting to find copper coils and barrels of mash, they instead encountered something wholly unexpected. Suspended in the center of a bubbling vat was a grotesque, lifeless creature. The thing had no known place in any taxonomy. By the agent's own account, it resembled nothing they had ever seen. Stunned but resolute, the agents then acted quickly. Fearing what the discovery might imply or expose, they made a drastic decision. They placed 500 pounds of dynamite beneath the still. The detonation obliterated the site. Not just the moonshine operation run by the elusive John Barleycorn, but also the remains of the alleged creature, because that's how terrifying it was. The blast left behind only scorched earth and twisted metal, with no physical evidence remaining. The truth of what the agents saw could no longer be verified or challenged. Pretty standard. Decades passed, but the story would not disappear. Instead, it just remained. In old letters, fading newspaper clippings, and whispered family accounts. Frederick County, it seemed, had not forgotten. Here and there, fragments resurfaced, journal entries from that era, cryptic sketches, and the archival mentions of strange happenings. As researchers began to retrace the steps left behind, it became clear, though, that there was more beneath the surface. Finding out the truth would mean piecing together a 100-year-old myth, folklore, well, I guess not really 100, hundreds of years old myth, folklore, and scattered testimony, and as the trail led deeper, a curious pattern began to emerge. Among the most compelling clues was a worn journal believed to belong to one of the revenue agents. In its pages were entries that contradicted the official record, detailed observations of the creature, notes on its physiology, its unnatural silence, and the fear it provoked. But oddly, as if almost divinely, just as the entries became specific, the journal broke off. Several key pages had been clearly removed. Despite extensive questioning, no witnesses were willing to actually speak just completely plain. Instead, each interview circled vague recollections, hesitant pauses, and a sidelong of glances. It was clear something was being withheld, but beneath the silence, traces would remain. Among them, a set of aging letters exchanged between local officials that were carefully worded that would go on to hint at one crucial detail. Evidence had been preserved, or at least had once been preserved. That discovery redirected the search. Buried in the county's land registry archives was a chain of property records tied to the Winters family. For nearly a century, they had quietly maintained ownership of a seemingly useless tract of land near Frog Hollow, uneven, rocky terrain with no water access or arable soil. Yet the parcel had never changed hands, passed deliberately through 3 generations. The deed itself was unremarkable. Still, the consistency of the ownership suggested its intent. The site, hidden beneath dense undergrowth and layers of seasonal decay, revealed itself only after careful inspection. Deep within the woods, almost entirely overtaken by the time that they had gotten there, lay an old root cellar, cracked stone, a sagging timber frame, and a rusted latch told of long abandonment. But within, untouched by weather or wildlife, something had endured. Wrapped in aged burlap and surrounded by a thick bed of salt was a preserved specimen. The preservation was crude, yet astonishingly effective. The body, shriveled and dried, had maintained its basic structure, elongated limbs, bony ridges, a jawline no zoologist would recognize. Even in its mummified state, the figure was quite unsettling. Precautions were taken, full protective gear was worn before the remains were then handled, but no known species matched what lay before them. Whatever had once been, it did not belong in any textbook. After they found this, news of the discovery would spread quickly. Soon after, a small crowd had begun to gather at the edge of the woods. Residents arrived without speaking, watching quietly from a distance. Their faces told more than their words ever had, an odd blend of worry, familiarity, and quiet resolution. It was as if the unearthing of the cellar had stirred something long buried, not just in the ground, but in memory. The specimen retrieved from the root cellar appeared at first glance like a relic of a lost epoch, something that might have stalked the earth in the age of dinosaurs. Its general structure echoed that of a theropod, actually, yet the resemblance faded quickly under closer inspection. The proportions were off. The skeletal balance, the angles of its limbs, none of it aligned with any known fossil lineage. This was not a creature pulled from the pages of paleontology, it was something else entirely. While it bore certain characteristics traceable to the theropod ancestry, this was no ancient predator observed in stone. This was a species that had somehow evolved far beyond its prehistoric roots. From beak to tail, the body stretched just over 14 feet, with nearly half of the length devoted to a tapering, muscular tail, likely used for balance and maneuverability. If standing upright, the creature would have stood approximately 6 feet at the shoulder. Its estimated weight approached 800 pounds, distributed across a frame that suggested both power and precision. The hind limbs were dense and muscular, clearly adapted for terrestrial movement, but the forelimbs told a bit of a more complex story. Nearly 5 feet long when fully extended, they were remarkably flexible, showing signs of joint articulation suited for climbing, grasping, or possibly even tool use. Covering the entire body was an intricate blend of scales and primitive feathers. These were not the bright, fleshy, like plumes of birds, but tightly layered earth-tone structures that likely functioned as camouflage in wooded or rocky environments. The patterns, even in decay, retained a natural symmetry that hinted at evolved environmental adaptation. More visually striking, though, were the appendages positioned just behind each shoulder. From these points extended a fan-shaped membrane framed by lightweight but strong support structures and covered in sleek aerodynamic feathers. Each wing-like surface measured nearly 4 feet from the base to the tip, forming a combined span of approximately 9 feet, which is a pretty big bird. Much of the creature's morphology carried specialized traits that at first seemed fairly inconsistent, but with time, patterns began to emerge. What initially felt like a biological mismatch soon revealed itself as a product of targeted evolutionary refinement, shaped by the constraints and opportunities of its environment. The head was perhaps the most striking feature. The skull tapered into a curved, keratinous beak, sharp-ridged and heavy-set. Moreover, the skull featured large orbital cavities set forward to provide a broad binocular field of vision, a critical trait for an animal moving through densely packed terrain. The size and depth of these cavities suggested it was most likely active during dawn and dusk. These low-light periods are when many prey animals are moving, but visibility remains poor. For a predator, this timing would offer the advantage of stealth. Additional detail came from the pronounced olfactory bulbs at the front of the skull. These impressions suggested a highly developed sense of smell, further supporting the idea that this was a forest-adapted predator capable of tracking prey through both visual acuity and chemical cues. The creature's head surface was sheathed in thick, textured skin, marked with a raised nodule that created a subtle reptilian contour, along with the dorsal ridge, especially towards the crown, which was short, coarse. Feathers emerged in scattered clusters, suggesting both thermoregulation and display function. Toward the back near the jawline, the skin shifted in character, giving way to dense, overlapping scales, while the front of the head bore a more abrupt transition, terminating in a large, keratinous beak. This beak, smooth and slightly iridescent, stood out not only in form but in implication. It aligned closely with multiple oral eyewitnesses who gave accounts over the years, descriptions of a creature with a metallic or glinting beak. Upon closer inspection, the surface showed signs of growth ridges and natural abrasion, patterns consistent with living raptors, though far more rugged and reinforced. At the base of the beak, pronounced muscle attachment sites indicated that the presence of a powerful bite force was there, one likely capable of cracking bone or puncturing armor-like hide. Yet as striking as the beak appeared, it merely concealed what would become the creature's most insane adaptation. Beneath it lay a highly specialized feeding structure, tentatively referred to as a tongue, though it bore little resemblance to that of modern vertebrates. The preserved organ extended from deep within the oral cavity and branched midway along its length into 4 elongated projections. These finger-like extensions appeared muscular and mobile, almost like prehensile tendrils, giving the unsettling illusion of a mouth full of tentacles. When fully extended, this organ reached well past the boundaries of its beak. Its structure suggested an ability not just to grasp and ensnare prey, but perhaps even to manipulate objects with precision, a trait rarely seen outside of primates and cephalopods. Anatomically, it was anchored by a modified hyoid apparatus, which if you don't know what those are, it's a set of bones that are connected dorsally to the base of the skull and ventrally to the larynx. Basically, in humans, it is the only free-floating bone that we have. So while the skeletal system is common in most vertebrates, providing support for tongue movement and swallowing, in this specimen, it appeared to be re-engineered, built to handle the increased complexity and mobility of the branched feeding organ. When scanned with an X-ray imaging, the tongue showed a surprisingly complex design. It was packed with muscle, not just in one direction, but in many. Some muscle bundles ran lengthwise, helping it stretch out and pull back in. Others were arranged in circles, giving it tight control. A third set ran at angles, allowing the tongue to twist and rotate. All these muscles were held together by strong, flexible tissue. This design was very similar to how an elephant's trunk or an octopus's arm actually works. These are called muscular hydrostats, structures made of only muscle but still strong and flexible. To move in so many ways, the tongue would also need many nerves, and that's exactly what researchers found. Nerve bundles were spread throughout the tongue, especially at the base of each of its finger-like tips. These nerves formed a dense network, likely giving the creature an excellent sense of touch and pressure. The tongue may have helped to kind of feel out like the size, shape, and texture of anything that it grabbed. Like chameleons' tongues, this strange organ could pull back inside the mouth when not in use. The forebranches folded neatly as the muscles then tightened, but unlike a chameleon, this tongue wasn't used to shoot out and catch insects with sticky spit. Instead, it was built for grabbing and holding. The shape, strength, and branching design allowed for the creature to seize its prey, hold onto it tightly, and stop it from escaping. Once the prey was pinned, the creature would then use its sharp, curved beak to deliver a quick and powerful bite. But there was more. The creature had large, curved claws on both of its front and back limbs. These claws showed clear signs of wear, as if they had been used to climb through rough surfaces again and again. This suggested that the creature may have spent time in trees or high places, possibly waiting above for the right moment to attack. Its hunting style likely used a mix of stealth, strength, and surprise. The tongue, with its extended reach and dexterous movement, allowed the creature to capture prey from unusual angles and distances. It could hunt from awkward positions, through gaps, over branches, and even while climbing upside down, effectively increasing its hunting range far beyond what the size might imply. Its strong neck and shoulders further supported this idea. Together with a powerful beak and multi-forked tongue, these muscles could lift and subdue animals much larger than expected. It's possible this creature could overpower prey the size of a small deer or sheep, a theory that fits with local legends of missing livestock. However, it was likely that smaller animals made up the bulk of its diet. Interestingly, many of those same reports also describe a flying creature that led researchers to look more closely at the structures along its side. At first glance, what looked like wings turned out to be something far more unusual. These were not wings in the typical sense. They're not built for flapping or powered flight. Instead, they appear to be a form of sophisticated gliding systems. The core of this system began with the scapular shoulder blades. These bones had become broad and triangular, modified to support large sail-like extensions. When fully open, they projected outwards and upward, forming firm, flat surfaces. These projections were covered with specialized feathers, streamlined and shaped to control airflow. Strong muscle attachments at the base indicated that the creature could deploy and angle them with precision, adjusting for wind, descent, or maneuvering between trees. Well, this gliding structure was also pretty similar to actually membranes seen in Draco lizards than if you were compare it to the wings of birds or bats. Yet with the added support of the feathered surface and the unique bone design, it stood out as something that was fairly unique. While strange at first glance, this kind of gliding adaptation is not unheard of in the fossil record. Creatures from several prehistoric periods, all showing similar gliding plates or extensions along the torso. None of them, however, came close to the size or complexity seen in the Appalachian specimen. The presence of the gliding wings helped shed light on centuries of mysterious sightings. When folded, these feathered structures lay flat along the creature's sides, barely visible, but once extended, they created a striking silhouette, wide, sail-like membranes that could have easily inspired the tales of dragons gliding through the Appalachian skies. Based on skeletal wear patterns and muscle attachments, it appeared the creature often hunted from elevated positions. From high up in trees, it could launch itself silently through the canopy, using its gliding membranes for controlled, quiet movement. Its flexible, tentacle-like tongue allowed it to snatch prey from both the branches and forest floor, all without ever touching the ground. But what made these wings even more fascinating was their origin. Unlike birds or bats, this creature's wings didn't develop from its arms or legs, but instead grew out from its shoulder blades. Broad, strong bones that acted like rigid supports for the gliding membranes. This was a rare and unique evolutionary feature. During a deeper examination of the chest cavity, another mystery would appear. Between the ribs, researchers discovered two unusual gland-like organs, each about the size of a clenched fist. At first, they seemed like they could be part of the lymphatic or hormonal systems, but further inspection revealed something else entirely. These organs were divided into multiple chambers, each lined with tissue that could secrete fluids. Thin ducts connected them in the throat area, and the complexity of their design suggested they played an important biological role, possibly related to chemical production, internal defense, or even hunting. But without living specimens, their exact purpose remained unknown. What was clear, however, was that this creature's biology was far more advanced and unusual than expected. As more features were uncovered, more questions just followed. Its powerful beak, its muscular branching tongue, its gliding wings, its unique internal glands, all of these traits pointed towards a long and isolated evolutionary path. Still, certain features such as the bipedal posture, three-toed feet, and skeletal structures hinted at a deeper ancestry. These matched closely with the known traits of theropod dinosaurs, and this group once included some of the most famous predators on Earth, and some lineages are believed to have survived in isolated parts of North America well into the early Paleocene. It now appeared that this Appalachian creature may have descended from one of those survivors, but over time its evolution had taken a strange turn. These bizarre creatures already defied what scientists once believed about meat-eating dinosaurs. With long claws, beaked mouths, and feathered bodies, they were far from typical predators. Perhaps most fascinating is what this creature suggests about evolution itself. The Appalachian specimen shares key traits with a group of dinosaurs known as, and for some reason I cannot pronounce this correctly, therizinosaurs. Good lord, why is it so hard to say? Probably because of Riz in the middle of the name is screwing with me. A family believed to have been largely herbivorous. These dinosaurs had long necks, broad torsos, and large claws, often used more for grasping plants than capturing prey. And yet, despite their differences in diet and behavior, the anatomical similarities between the Appalachian creature and these ancient theropods are striking. Now, this raises a possibility that major shifts in anatomy weren't limited to just a few lineages. Perhaps, as dense forests began to replace the open plains of the late Cretaceous, some theropods adapted in unexpected ways. In fact, I was just watching something the other day about North America's. Is it North America or was it Australia? No, it was definitely North America. We used to have a marsupial lion that was running around here, and it used to actually be a herbivore, and then it essentially just kept adapting and changing as evolution does, and eventually it became a predator because it was like, well, I mean, there's meat everywhere, and let me just go ahead and eat. It's kind of crazy how things can go from herbivore to an actual carnivore, but also remember, horses right now, if there's like a baby chick somewhere or something like near it. I've literally watched a horse eat one before. So herbivores will still eat meat if it's around. I've seen squirrels eat meat. It's just the same thing. Like, herbivores are not your friends. So traditional hunting methods, chasing down prey in open ground, may have become, less effective over time, and in response, some species, like the therizinosaurs, leaned towards herbivory. But others, possibly including this Appalachian predator, forged a different path entirely. Instead of running around trying to capture prey, this creature adapted to strike from above, using its unique gliding membranes to move through the trees. Its specialized tongue gave it the reach and grip to catch animals in places where most predators couldn't follow. And this strategy may have allowed it to dominate a three-dimensional forest environment where stealth and surprise mattered more than speed. Its adaptations were not only clever, they were also fairly efficient. The gliding wings allowed for short bursts of aerial travel, while leaving the forelimbs free for climbing and grasping. Unlike birds, or really pterosaurs, which sacrifice limb use for gaining of flight, this creature preserved its mobility on land while gaining limited movement in the air. Taken together, these traits reveal something pretty remarkable, just how flexible the basic theropod body plan could actually be. And if such changes occurred here, hidden deep within the forest of Appalachia, one must ask, what other forms could have evolved elsewhere, unseen and unstudied? How many branches of the theropod family tree might still be waiting to be uncovered? This preserved specimen, with all of its strange features and unique adaptations, may be only one of a piece of a larger story, one that is still not fully discovered. For generations, the ancestors of the Winters family had guarded this remarkable creature, preserving not only its physical remains, but the truth of its existence. Their quiet stewardship had protected a story far older and far more significant than most would ever realize. The state of preservation suggested that this creature had likely survived into the modern era, but the rapid expansion of industry in the Appalachian region during the 19th and early 20th centuries would have brought immense strain to any remaining population. The dense, uninterrupted forests that such a creature would have depended on were quickly fractured, cut by logging, mining, and human settlement. Because humanity, number one. For an animal of this size, one that required vast stretches of habitat to move and hunt, this fragmentation may have been a death sentence. Still, even now, satellite imagery reveals pockets of deep forests, remote ridges and valleys where the canopy remains relatively unbroken. In the end, no one can say for sure whether this creature still exists. There have been no clear sightings in recent years, but the preserved body protected by the Winters family for so long proves that this creature once lived not just in stories, but in the real world. Over time, the land that once supported it has changed. The deep forests of the Appalachian Mountains have been cut, divided, and developed. While a few patches of wild forest remain, they are small and scattered. A creature that once needed large, quiet areas to live and hunt would now struggle to survive. The Winters family chose to protect this creature's body, not for fame or money, but because they believed it was important. They saw value in keeping the truth safe. Long ago, government officials claimed to have destroyed the remains to protect their work, which is okay, But the locals choose a different path. To them, the discovery meant something worth guarding. Now, with scientists preparing to move the specimen into a secure modern facility, some wonder what may be lost. Storing it in a clean, temperature-controlled room may protect its body, but it also takes it away from the place it came from: the mountains, the trees, and the stories. Old barns are still in the area, and they still have those painted symbols, signs meant to keep the creature away. Today, those symbols may be seen as something else. They may mark places where memory and mystery still live, where fact and folklore once walked side by side. And maybe some mysteries, like the one buried in those ancient hills, are meant to stay just as they are, quiet, waiting, part of the land that once hid them so well. But as always, I want to break in here. So, is the Snallygaster actually real? Well, if you look it up, apparently, I don't know. There's a claim that it was created to scare a certain demographic because people are just kind of like that sometimes. So, no, it's probably not real. The actual account of what it looks like and the descriptions written, obviously that's also a part of folklore. So you could probably go hike the Appalachian Trail and not be too afraid of it. Of course, you got to watch out for the banjos, but I'm down in the South too, and we all play banjo down here. It's just how it goes. So this type of creature, while at one point in time it could have existed and there could be something in the fossil record about it, the reality is that today, no, it doesn't exist. And if it does exist, much like the Michigan Dogman, who I have to go fight if this channel reaches 1 million subs by I think it's 2027 in June, because that's when the Michigan Dogman shows up. I will go find the Snallygaster if we reach 5 million subs. And it doesn't even pick a year that it comes out. It's just out all the time. So I could be like 86 trying to find this thing, because that's probably how long it would take. But apart from that, I do want to thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, then please leave a like, as it helps get the video out there. And subscribing helps build the channel. We've been in, I think, like 250K subs now for, I think, a year. Well, not 250K, but within this, 10,000 sub range. So we're about to break through that. And then we're just gonna keep on moving. Somebody said this channel fell off hard. It's not that it fell off, it's just because I don't know how to upload with any regularity to kind of like this pet project I got going on over here. I have started doing that, I think like the last 8 weeks. So it is like people are actually starting to get like at least some heads up that I'm uploading again. We'll just kind of see how it goes. I mean, I'm not gonna stop uploading because I do enjoy talking about this stuff. And if you guys enjoy it, hey, click the notification bell. Anyways, I want to thank my patrons real quick, because those are the real goats of this channel. At the Literal Wendigo tier, we have Grayson West, Invictus Echo, Monkey Man, and Scrungle. Thank you guys. At the Eyewitness event tier, we have Beer Malaga and Dragon Master Knight. Thank you as well. And at the secondhand accounts tier, we have Bianca, Fred Rush, Stutz, and Troy. And to the rest of my patrons, I do appreciate y'all's support as well. It goes a long way towards helping, so thank you. But all right, that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I will see y'all in the next one.